developing the framework of our BCP into taking it into a more practical implementation. So you would have noticed in some of the other reports we've talked a lot about there's been a bit of staff turnover, etc. So we've kind of changed our focus to capturing critical processes, dependencies and resources. We need to keep essential services going. So capturing all of those through Q1 and Q2. It just helps to reduce the reliance on knowledge held by individual staff. So that's where the BCP is at. The other component is around our incident management team's preparedness. Now, we do have somewhat of a training gap that we've identified in that space. However, we have a plan to address it rather rapidly. Now, our Hawke's Bay Emergency Management Office that Katrina's just talked to, they have a very comprehensive SIMS-based training structure that our incident management team is going to tap into, and we're going to start filling any gaps that we identify and get our workforce up to speed. To complement that, we're also looking to, probably around October, arrange an externally driven incident management team exercise, just so our team get to experience a real-time event and learn how to respond it, and then take some lessons learned away from gaps that we may have identified in that exercise, and if there's any improvement opportunities. So that's in the pipeline as well. And then last update, we talked about the fuel crisis. Now that was peak in around March and May this year. It's kind of tapered off a little bit. But now we've come to the end of the financial year, we have seen a budget impact of around 66K increase. And then last couple of weeks ago, our Niue office, they would have reported on their fuel impact, and they've experienced an increase of 189K related to the program in terms of fuel cost. A kind of gold nugget in that is we've just come out the other end of our annual greenhouse gas emissions audit, and it actually identified that these practices we put in place as part of the fuel crisis, like better business practices around staff travel and fleet use, we've actually reduced staff travel by 12% this year, and fuel use came down by 8%. So we've taken those learnings that we've embedded from the fuel crisis, and hopefully that becomes more of a BAU practice. And that's just a general update on where we've got to with our internal preparedness. So we're kind of moving from the planning into practical implementation, and then increasing that preparedness with staff training and awareness. So I'll take the paper as read, and if there's any questions, please sing out.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just around the less fuel use across the organisation, could you just provide a brief rationale, and whether that is because we've had high staff turnover, we've had a restructure in the organisation? Can you just provide rationale as to why less of fuel?
Well, good question. So through you, Chair, the fuel crisis kicked off maybe a phase 2 of a fleet review. So what we've done is we've actually reduced fleet, one, but also reduced commuting in vehicles unless not essential to the role. So that trims off that those Ks to and from home. We've also the team's been awesome at pushing electric first. So we're trying to use the right fleet vehicle for the job. Mm-hmm. So there's a real combination of all of those efficiency measures that's kind of got us here to help cap that budget impact of the fuel crisis.
Right. Thank you.
Any others?
No.
No? We have a movement seconder to receive the report, please.
Happy to move. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Niwai. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Thank you.
Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Avian flu update.
Richard and Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and it's my pleasure to introduce this paper. We'll take the paper as read. I would like to introduce the team here today. So Kelly Burkett is our Manager Biomanagement. Mark Mitchell is our Principal Advisor, Biosecurity and Biodiversity, and Will Roberts from Health and Safety. And I guess just an opening prior to the team presenting, I guess it's centering on the key things that we need to consider as HBRC. And those are the three things in terms of our responsibility as an employer, our responsibility as a landowner, and our responsibility in terms of engaging with the community or that regional responsibility and how we actually contribute to that. And so the context of bird flu and this emerging risk to our region from an HBRC perspective, those are the areas that I'm keen for us to focus on from a risk perspective. So I'll hand over to Kelly.
Yeah, I'll kick us off. So firstly, so what is H5 or H5N1 or HPAI or various terms you'll see in the media, which are referring to avian influenza. It's bird flu. So bird flu's been around for a long, long time. It's nothing new, but like most viruses, they mutate over time. And in 2020, a new strain of H5N1 was detected, clad 2.3.4.4b, if that gives you a feel for how many strains there might be out there. It emerged, and as you can see on the map there, it started spreading around the globe quite quickly. Now, the reason we are concerned with this particular clad is not only is it highly infectious to wild birds and poultry, it has now infected mammals, including humans. So now it's a human health risk as well. So although globally, it's spread around globally. That map there is not fully up to date yet. That's the latest one I could find. It has now reached New Zealand, and so that was documented in the paper. So globally, it's affected over 500 plus bird species, 90 mammal species, and it's had a serious impact on the poultry industry because they sit at about a 95% mortality. So really, really big impacts for poultry. As mentioned, it does infect humans, but it's considered a low human health risk, essentially because two reasons. Those who have contracted it today are generally those people working very closely with sick or dead birds, and the poultry industry has to respond and deal to those birds. And secondly, there's no known transmission between humans to humans. It's only from birds to humans. So that's a really important thing to note. I guess I should also note, so the main way it spreads is through the feces of the bird or secretions like saliva. And the most likely pathway to New Zealand, like shown in that map there, is through migratory birds. Wild birds essentially flying to New Zealand and then getting into our wild bird population. So what does that mean for us as an organisation? So the main risk is human health. So as an employer, we have a duty of care under the Health and Safety Act where we need to keep our staff safe whilst at work. So we need to make sure we put things in place to help protect them. The big one for us is as a landowner. So we have a legal responsibility as a landowner to try and minimise the impact or circumstance of the public coming into contact or interacting with potentially infected wild birds on our land. And finally, under the Biosecurity Act, we have a regional leadership role for pest management. Now, this is an infectious disease that sort of firmly sits with MPI, but we have been assisting them in trying to get our regions prepared through reaching out to our TLAs and helping disseminate information. And Kelly's going to touch on a bit more about that now.
So HBRC and how we're responding. So we are trying to get prepared as best we can within the organisation. This touches a lot of parts of the organisation. We have our health and safety team who are working on our, looking after our staff and making sure that we keep them as safe when they are having to respond to any events. We have our works group staff who will be helping out with our regional parks, responding to any reports of dead birds within those parks and within HBRC land. We've also got our comms teams working with us, our CX teams to respond, receive calls and for our reporting. So it is a really across HBRC response. We're working closely with the project team to ensure that we are getting all our ducks, maybe not the right term, things in a row ready for when this does, because it is a when rather than if it turns up on our doorstep. If I touched on everything, I think it's through there. So landowner, those are our most important things for keeping the public safe, and the regional preparedness, which is us working with MPI and other agencies across the bay.
So yes, there's lots in there, and as you note in the paper, a lot of it. So we are not bird flu experts, right? We are heavily reliant on MPI to provide that guidance to us. MPI have been watching overseas and bringing those learnings back through to us, and that's why it's really important to note from a national perspective. So MPI are the lead on this, and they've taken a One Health approach, where they're working with those other organisations on the right-hand side there. And they've really broken it down into sort of three key areas. The first one is they want to reduce the impact on our native species. And that firmly sits with Department of Conservation under the Wildlife Act. And there is a bit of concern because we simply don't know what the impacts will be. We don't know how vulnerable our native species are to this virus and what those mortality rates might be. And you may have seen in the media that they've undertaken a vaccination program for their most endangered species, which is, I believe, 5 different species, such as the takahe. Because not only do we have very few of them, they're actually quite closely related to each other. So they are quite concerned. The second one is the next 2 points, is the poultry sector. Now, this could have a huge impact on them, given it's a 95% mortality. So this firmly sits with MPI, and they've been working with the poultry sector, essentially bringing all those birds back indoors to try and remove contact of wild birds in their feces. And part of that is also trying to maintain our domestic supply of poultry, both eggs and meat. So there could be flow-on effects there once it arrives. And the final one is public health, and that's effectively every landowner, including us. And that's where we fit into that piece of the puzzle. And it is worth noting that, as on the earlier map, we are not able to stop wild birds turning up on our shores with this disease. We cannot contain or eradicate it once it's here. So there's going to be no biosecurity response as such. It's going to be like COVID. We've got to learn how to prepare for it, how to manage those risks, and to live with it long term. And finally, so we are still only at 2 cases, which is, to be honest, surprising. People would have, the experts anyway, thought they'd start to see more cases now. So it has been good because it's given us some breathing space to get a bit more planning done. But the current advice is still the same. So keep your distance from dead or sick birds. Don't go up and touch them. Don't interact with them. And that includes your pets too, because cats and dogs can contract it too. Basic hygiene, wash your hands and keep your gear clean. And finally, if you see 3 or more sick or dead birds, report it through to MPI. That's the Pest and Disease Hotline. And that's effectively what we would do. If we receive those calls, we are passing them on to MPI as the national lead to respond. That's it. Thanks, Mo.
Sophie.
Question, thank you, through you, Chair. I'm sure it's in our plan, but it's just not visible in the paper. Do we have a trigger? I know Councillor Roadley's concerned about this. Do we have trigger planning within our planning for closing our open spaces, and what does that look like?
So what we've produced is a plan for our regional parks. We've taken a high risk approach. So unfortunately, waterfowl are one of the main species that are susceptible to it. So when we look at our parks, we do have a lot of wetlands, including peka peka. So how we respond is it's not clear cut. It's going to be down to how many birds are there present, as in sick or dead, and how easy would it be to reduce or prevent access to those parks. So one that comes to mind is like Peka Swamp. It would be easier to close that park than for us to get staff to go in and try and pick up dead or sick birds and deal to those. And MPI's guidance has been really clear. This is based on overseas learnings. If you go in and start picking up sick or dead birds, not only are you stressing those birds further, leading to higher mortality, you actually can spread the virus as well because those birds will fly away and die elsewhere. However, we do have parks that have high use, lots of access points, which aren't as practical just to close. So it's going to be elements of learning as we go, but definitely we have a process for working through that, yes.
Do the experts have a view as to how quickly this virus could mutate?
I couldn't answer that, no.
So it's just anyone's guess.
Well, yeah.
So we don't know what we're really facing, do we?
We know the clad that arrived here, but whether the next arrival is a different one. I do know when it went down through South America, it mixed with a local strain and that allowed it to then jump to seals. So there's all sorts of stuff happening. So yeah, but I couldn't answer that fully for here.
Thank you.
Oh, I just wondered if, are we doing any comms on this?
Yeah, we're working obviously on a collective basis. So we've had one of our comms team working with as part of that national cohort, and it's to make sure that we've actually got consistency of messaging. So again, it comes back to we're not responsible for the messaging; we are part of the messaging. So we've really got to take our lead from MPI, who are running the overall, and in terms of working with government departments, we learn pretty quickly as to they're at the front, they're managing this, and how we actually contribute to it. So it is part of that collective approach. So we've had one of our comms team on that working group, which is very helpful because it actually makes it consistent.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, team. So MPI are working at a national level, but they assume that the regional council for this region take a leadership role more locally. Is that correct?
So it's the interpretation of leadership, and we contribute to the leadership. So MPI and DOC and Ministry of Health are still the kind of lead agencies, because it's not just regional council functions that are actually impacted by it. The big sector that's going to be impacted will be the poultry sector, and also it extends across into the TLAs as well. So we're only a part of that. So our obligation is how we contribute to it, but we're not out there representing the response.
Thank you. And just secondary to that, and I say that because I want to think of what's relative to the region. Are there specific, say, mahi kai species for this region? Takahi, not so much one, but are there mahi kai species that are in threat to our region?
That's a challenging question. I know Department of Conservation have been running some hui, reaching out, addressing some of those, because they, under the Wildlife Act, are responsible for that. I cannot. I know they've done some work, but I couldn't comment. Sorry on what has been addressed thus far.
Māori engagement that's run by MPI or
MPI and DOC.
Yeah, and so absolutely. And I know MPI have pulled some booklets together, and they address many different. It's essentially guidance for Māori around the impacts of H5. They've released one, and they've got 2 more to go. They've also on the back foot a little bit when those 2 incursions turned up. So they've now got an iwi liaison person and they've reached out to our Māori partnerships team, and I believe they're looking at doing some regional hui in the near future as well in partnership, but very much again reliant on MPI's leadership.
And we're also in contact with our conversations with our Māori partnerships team about our regional parks and connecting them with the right people.
Thank you.
Di.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, Richard and I have talked about this quite extensively, and I think as a governor, I've been concerned and thinking about the balance that we need to find around perception. And I'm very comfortable, obviously, that MPI are leading this work, but our community will have potentially a different view on that, and will expect, just as a default, the responsibility will lie in their minds with regional council. And I think what we saw happen in Australia was it went from one case, I think is on the map, and then it went sort of from one to out of control, sort of probably not overnight, but it appeared to be overnight. And I think potentially that will be what happens when it hits Hawke's Bay. It will go from nobody's talking about it to everybody's talking about it. And so knowing that our comms team have got good pre-prepared, whether they be Facebook tiles or whatever their expertise provides, locked and loaded, ready to go, is quite comforting, and I'm sure that they are all over that. Perhaps, Richard, would you like to speak about that perception of our community? We did talk about creating images that were very clearly MPI at the centre and us as supporters. So perhaps, Richard, you could talk a bit more about that.
Thank you, Councillor. And this is very much at the detail level as we work through developing our work method process. So operationally, we're developing work methods so that each part of the organisation understands in their particular role how they respond. And a part of that will be that communication. So again, as I referenced earlier, we've got to be careful we don't get ahead of MPI, so we've got to respect their role as the lead, and also particularly Department of Conservation, because they have that mandated accountability. So we've got to make sure that we're actually working in harmony, not working out to one side. So it's really important that we have that clarity of messaging. And I think this combination not only of written communication, but some pictorial information and using things like Facebook Live and those sort of events where we can actually extend the messages beyond just the normal newspaper ads and things like that. But I also think you're right, Councillor, in that what we're going to see, similar to Australia, is that you'll see when it arrives and when it starts having an effect, there will be a large impact. And then it'll trail off, and we will have to learn to live with it as part of our community. So that'll be a period of time. Don't know how long that would be, but it'll be a matter of months or seasons. We haven't really hit our main migratory bird season yet. That is yet to come. So we're probably a little way away, or not far, but imminent. Does that help, Councillor?
Yes, and I think what we've seen, I was thinking to the Waitai eel mortality event, is that as leaders in our community goes into this sort of grief cycle, and I think what you're describing, Richard, is that we will see a large mortality up front, and then it'll tail off. But as governors in the region, we are going to have to manage our community as they grieve these, whether it's dotterels or seabirds or treasured species across the region. So I'm assuming officers have got a plan around that.
Conrad.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly, are you able to go back to the slide that has the global slide there? Just on that one, so 2021, and Mark, you talked about the bird to human, and then also the seal. from there, and you may not know, and I need to ask because this will worry our people in our community. Any human been affected to date from, so we look at 2021 November, October, November, have they had any signs of anyone around there being infected?
You meaning
Human,
globally?
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure, but I do know they linked one to the seals, where one human became ill, and I believe they passed away. But the balance have basically been from first responders or people dealing with sick or dead birds. And again, that's why wearing PPE appropriately is so important. So again, I'm unsure what the mortality rates are. They are low, from my understanding, for this particular clade that's arrived in New Zealand. But Ministry of Health really consider this a low health risk. And they've also provided guidance on that it hasn't shown any ability to spread to like tuna or anything else within those systems. It's very much mammals or birds. But if once it arrives in New Zealand, we're going to have to change the way we interact in environments where H5 may be present. And we're reliant on MPI to provide more and more guidance as we move forward on that. And I believe those booklets are producing cover some of those topics too that they will be releasing soon.
Yeah, because if you didn't have the right equipment on, then you went home to your family. You know, that's what I'm
Potential risk.
Yeah, potential
Absolutely.
risk. And
Yeah.
I thought there might have been something that a little bit more information on that's happened to humans.
Yeah. We could come back to you with what we can find out in that space. But again, being Ministry of Health and MPI, I don't want to stab on that one.
Okay, if there's no further question. Oh, sorry. Sure.
I'm sort of going a bit deeper in the mahinga kai aspect of things, and a lot of our PSGs we have hunting club. So you've got people that actually go into areas that the public don't usually venture into, and they may come across us or their dogs, or when they're hunting pigs and deer and etc. So it's about needing to have that communication, especially with those PSGs, because they all have hunting clubs set up, so they can disseminate that information quickly. Also, even when you're whitebaiting, you've got waterfowl. You could come across it, and it's just about messaging, really. And I've just noted at a quick look, because I knew we're not far off from Kuaka, coming to our shores in September, and that's between September and March. So that could be a possible contamination on its way with the migratory bird. So yeah. And definitely, it's going to be upsetting for the whole community when we start seeing our money dying. Yeah, and then also knowing that it's a risk to humans, our other animals. But I have seen a little bit out there. I think they need to increase the information. But do you think there's a risk with the kuaka?
Potentially, New Zealand's isolation has really been the reason we're one of the last countries to get it. However, possibly not so much the kuaka, but there is a lot of bird movement between Australia and New Zealand. So it's taken approximately a month to arrive and then start spreading through Australia. But like the COVID curve, they are absolutely taking off now. It's now very much in the local wildlife as opposed to just migratory birds. And we get all sorts of shore plovers and other things moving back and forth. So there is a much higher chance of it arriving now, being a shorter distance, and then for it to fly over and then feel unwell. So unfortunately.
Just a supplementary to what Councillor Rory has mentioned around the mahinga kai stuff. We're in the season of we're in haka season and basically our hunting clubs primarily when they're coming across birds, they generally hand those birds on to weavers and kapahaka groups. So we're talking, so I can't emphasize, I guess the comms and that information getting out to those schools. October is the school regional kapahaka, and then following on from that, you're looking at Matatini. There's some decent comm and maybe some direct comms to those in and around, utilising that resource. Issue of feathers.
Just through you, Chair, that really good point, and I think it's a great opportunity for the national comms to go through all the particularly schools and education, but also back through the PSGEs and just it's the consistent messaging. I guess that's from my perspective. I'm wanting to make sure that it's consistent and that we're not causing confusion out there. And that everybody's getting the same message.
Okay. I'll move the resolution to receive the report. Can I have a second? Thank you, Michelle. Anyone want to make any comments? No? Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
Chair, just one comment around one of the staff members possibly being, well, you're waiting on tests to see if they've got immunity. Is that correct?
Yeah, we what I've been working on in particular is things around your PPE and your safety plans and such, and that will also encompass people, staff members in particular, with immune compromised situations. So obviously we will make sure that we keep those safe, and that will always be front of mind. So where we roll out training, we will also identify then through the staff and through the managers where there are concerns and where there are immune deficiencies in place, then we'll remove those from that work.
And I guess if it becomes an issue, just that being reported through our health and safety register, that we get to have overviews over. Thank you.
Just one more question on the with the likes of Ministry of Health and Health New Zealand. I hope they're being proactive in terms of PPE acquisition. Because if this thing is certainty, which it appears to be, just thinking of COVID, there was a shortage of appropriate PPE that was a real problem with addressing our response to it. I just wonder, can you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've already, through funding from MPI, actually have procured PPE ready to go. We did so some months ago, just in case it was to pop up alongside signage as well, which we've worked nationally to get a template that we can all use, that everyone recognises. However, that's for the initial response. We're going to have to do this long term. So we're still in the process of working out what's the best PPE long term. We have stuff ready to go now, but we will need to purchase more. However, the suppliers are very aware of this. And so they know exactly what type of PPE is required thanks to the guidance from Ministry of Health. So they have already started putting stuff aside knowing it's coming.
Okay. Thank you. So, did I get to?
Just all agree. Say aye.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Which brings us on to procurement, page 102.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Graham Pomeroy, our Head of Procurement and Commercial Contracting, to introduce this paper, noting that he will be back in PX to bring some more specifics.
Hello. For those of you who I haven't met, there's a couple of unfamiliar faces. I'm Graham Pomeroy. I'm the Head of Procurement and Commercial Contracting. Been here just over a year now. So as Pip said, this will be in two parts. The second part will be in the public excluded because I'm going to take you through some commercial information that because of this commercial sensitivity, we can't make more public. So given procurement is always a good news story, this is a good news story. I'll take the paper as read. There's four things I suppose I want to just point out from the paper. Firstly, HBRC runs a hybrid procurement model, which means that we're a small team. We're a team of 2.5 people, and so we deal with the large, more complex procurements, while the teams actually do a lot of self-help and deal with the small stuff. So, for example, we helped with the recent bus contract that we've just completed. We are building compliance through capability, and by that I mean we're taking a deliberate focus on putting in help material for teams, putting in checklists, putting in guidance. So rather than going out and saying you're doing it wrong, we're helping them to actually do it right. The contract management system, which we'll have a look at in the public excluded, is giving us considerable visibility on contracts across the organisation and where our spend is and who our providers are that we're spending a lot with. And fourthly, we're demonstrating real strategic uplift and also real value. And again, I'll take you through some of the examples of savings that we've actually made through the processes we've put in place. So on the paper itself, I'm open to any questions or thoughts you may have.
Any questions or comments?
That's the great thing about good news.
Happy to move if you're ready, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone? I'll second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Which brings us to PX, and we need a mover and seconder to move us from there. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Pennywise. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. We're now in PX.